So I recently just finished binging all of Season 4 of Stranger Things, and I think it was pretty good. I'd have to say that I enjoyed Season 4 better than Season 2 and 3, and Season 1 and Season 4 are tied for my favorite seasons. I really enjoyed the violent tone that this season had compared to the other seasons. I also enjoyed the hour-long and movie-length episodes as well. Some people may not like the lengthy episodes, but I really like them since they give me more time to bond with the characters, whether they be good or bad. In this video, I'm not really going to be reviewing the season as a whole, rather I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite parts of the season. With anything I say in this video, don't take it too seriously. I'm just a guy sitting in a chair sharing his thoughts on a TV show. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. To start us off, I'm just going to be rapid firing through some scenes and moments that I really liked. One take shootout. A scene that I thought was great was the one take shootout in the Byers' house. I really liked the chaotic shaky cam that was used in the scene as it added to the tension and craziness of the moment. Also, props to the unknown agent man for killing all those government soldiers with a Beretta M9. Eddie's rockout. I really enjoyed Eddie's rockout scene. I felt like this scene was a great character moment for Eddie. I also felt like the rockout scene makes sense and was appropriate. It didn't feel like an injected fun moment like when Dustin and Susie decided to go High School Musical. Eddie performed Master of Puppets to attract the attention of the demo bats so Nancy, Steve, and Robin could infiltrate the Creel house. I also really liked how Eddie said,
"Chrissy, this is from you."
It just adds to the heartbreak of a relationship that never happened. Jonathan and Purple Palm Tree Delight. As much as I didn't like this side plot for Jonathan, I think that it's a very realistic situation. This side plot is played off as a joke, but I could really see Jonathan falling into drugs to wash away his problems. I wish that they dug a little bit more on why Jonathan fell to drugs and played it less as a joke. I think that would have made for a great character moment for Jonathan and Charlie Heaton. 11 is dope. I really liked the scene where 11 destroys the helicopter. I thought it was the coolest thing to be in the perspective of the sniper and panning from 11 being down to the distraction of Jonathan's van to where 11 was lying down to where 11 moved to. Then we just get a close-up of 11's face and her arm extended. Well, I got no other words to say, but she looks bad. Dustin and Wayne Munson. A moment that had me tearing up was when Dustin was telling Wayne Munson of his nephew's sacrifice. This moment hurt me because only the people that really knew Eddie will know that he didn't do anything wrong. The line that broke me the most was when Dustin says,
"He could have run. He could have saved himself. But he fought. He fought and died to protect this town. This town that hated him."
None of the Hawkins residents will know of the sacrifice Eddie made to try to protect them, and that's just unfair. The people will continue to think that Eddie Munson was the mastermind behind all the tragedy. I didn't catch this the first time, but the guitar pick necklace that Dustin gives Wayne is the same necklace Eddie used to play his Master of Puppets solo, and that just makes both scenes hurt even more. Now I'm going to be moving on to scenes that I have more to say. Eddie's death. Eddie was definitely one of my favorite characters for this new season. I really enjoyed seeing him put on an edgy exterior while having a soft and caring interior. It was nice to see how Eddie brought in outsiders and took them under his wing to feel included. I also really liked the small amounts of scenes we got with Eddie and Chrissy, and I think the two of them would have made a great duo. I think that Eddie's death seemed like it was inevitable. If Eddie were to survive and return to Hawkins, I think he would immediately be taken into custody and probably would have been jailed since the people of the town were already convinced he was the culprit of the murders. I don't think there would have been a way for Eddie to clear himself unless Maybe Hopper came back to Hawkins as chief of police and was able to clear Eddie. But even then, I don't know if that'd work. I would have liked if Eddie's death was more directly heroic, since I think it would have hurt more, but I understand why they didn't do it. Even though I don't think it was necessary for Eddie to stop and fight, I think it was appropriate. Eddie was pushed off his bike by a bat, and that's why Eddie had to run on foot. I don't think that Eddie would have been able to outrun and hoard the bats, given the bats caught him while he was on a bike. Eddie probably would have made it a couple yards before the demo bats would have caught up to him, and we would have seen the same fate go down, but with Eddie not being as content with himself as we saw in the version we got. As frustrating as it seems, I think it was the right move to have Eddie stop and decide to fight instead of running and staying alive in that instance. I had already figured that Eddie was going to die in this season, but it still hurt like hell to see him actually go. When Eddie says,
Good. Does it magically graduate? I think it's my year, Anderson. I think it's finally my year.
yeah, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And when Joseph Quinn and Gaten Matarazzo decide to add this,
I love you, Dad. I love you too.
yeah, I was just gone. This was just such a great performance by Joseph Quinn all season and by Gaten Matarazzo. I'd also just like to add that if you're mad about having new characters introduced and then die soon after, then you shouldn't watch Fear the Walking Dead Season 7. You should be grateful that your character got at least one season. Will is my favorite character. I have always wanted Will to have more of a role in this series, but we haven't gotten much of him. For the first 3 seasons, Will is basically a conduit for the villain of the season. But some of my favorite moments of the show still involve Will at the helm. In Season 1, the whole mystery of Will's disappearance really drove the plot for me and got me invested. When Joyce and Hopper find Will in the Upside Down and save him, that was a great moment. All of the build-up from the season turned into a satisfying and emotional conclusion with Will's rescue. I can still remember seeing Hopper's expression in both the past and the present, and how hard he was fighting to keep Will alive. I also enjoyed seeing the reunion of Mike, Lucas, Dustin, and Will in the end of the season as well. In Season 2, well, Will just got sidelined real hard. Will had to be saved again after just coming back, so Noah Schnapp didn't have much to do but be shirtless, sweat, and have seizures. Yeah, we don't talk about that season for Will. Season 3 Will didn't get much to do either. His main purpose really is to just touch his neck and say when the monsters are near. On a realer note though, Will's plot of not wanting to grow up really hit me hard. At the time, I was at the same spot Will was at. I was heading into high school and the people around me were starting to become young adults. While everyone was getting ready to drive and getting into relationships, I just wanted to play video games with friends. The scenes where Mike tells Will that they aren't kids anymore, and the scene when Will destroys Castle Byers both made me tear up because I was feeling exactly what he was feeling. In Will's case, he didn't get the chance to grow up like the rest of his friends. Will was abducted by an otherworldly being, and when he returned, he was taken over again by another. Will didn't have the chance to mature and build better relationships with other people. Will missed out on a huge portion of the most important years of his life. In Season 4, Will is involved in probably the worst and least seen plotline. The Jonathan Group plotline didn't have much important stuff to do until Volume 2, so that means all of Volume 1, the group's story just feels weak compared to the others. Even with that though, I still enjoyed some of the scenes that we got with the Jonathan Group. My favorite scene. My favorite scene in Season 4 is not the end of Episode 4 when Max escapes Vecna. My favorite scene in this season was in Episode 8 when Will pours out his emotions to encourage Mike. Will uses the emotional buildup of his own to create a story for Eleven and to reassure Mike that everything will be okay. What hurt me the most was after Will was done. We see Will break down after he is able to express his pent-up feelings towards Mike. We see how much pain it caused Will to say what he did, knowing that his dream will never be able to come true. What I liked even more about this scene was when we get to see Jonathan's reaction to Will's emotional speech. Throughout Will's speech, we see the camera constantly cut back to Jonathan looking at the rearview mirror as to show that Jonathan is paying close attention to the words that Will says. We see that Jonathan feels guilty for not being there for Will since they moved to California. Jonathan hears Will and knows that he is hurting. We get to see that Jonathan is still the caring big brother that we saw and rooted for in the first season. And we get even more when Jonathan talks to Will in the Surfer Boy pizza place in the finale episode. Jonathan and Will have another great scene where they both share that even though they don't hang out much anymore, they are still there for each other and love one another. That was another thing that hit me hard too. Will and Jonathan's relationship might have fell off, but that doesn't mean their love for each other fell off. You don't have to hang out with someone every day to show that you care about them. It's okay to be distant so long as you're there to support one another whenever. Charlie Heaton and Noah Schnapp both give great performances for two of the most heartwarming moments of the series. Max's fate. Now, I'm gonna be controversial, but honest. I didn't like Max as much as other people seem to. Now hear me out. I don't hate her, but she just wasn't really one of my favorite characters. I really liked her scene where she runs from Vecna. Like everyone else, I think that scene was made to near perfection, from the flashbacks to the visuals and to the music. That scene was just overall amazing. However, even then, I didn't have the connection I do with her that I have with Steve or Hopper or Dustin or even Eddie. When Max was introduced into the show, she was just a girl that the boys were chasing after. And when she was fleshed out more, I still didn't really care for her part in the story. I wish that we got to see more of Max's home life in seasons 2 and 3, so we could have had more of a connection with her. I don't think that I saw enough of Max and Billy to fully believe that she cared for him as much as she said, which is why I was glad that Max confessed that she had times that she hated Billy. Billy was a bad person, and even though he made a heroic sacrifice, it doesn't clear him from his mean and racist debt. When Max faces Vecna in the finale, I was expecting our group to win the battle against Vecna, but they didn't. Vecna was victorious in the end. Since the villain was going to win this round, I expected there to be massive repercussions, and when I saw Max getting fixed by a chiropractor, I thought that Max's death was going to be the catastrophic loss that the group took in Vecna's victory. But it seems like the show chickened out on killing Max. Lucas says that Max died, but was then resurrected by 11. Now, this is the part that made me dislike Max's resurrection. I think it would have been great if 11 randomly found out that she could heal people. When we see 11 bring Max back, it seems like she knows what she is doing, but we have never seen her be able to do anything or even attempt anything like it before. To me, the scene plays out like 11 has known that she could heal people, but she hasn't done it in a while, or has tried but was never able to fully do it. This is how I would have liked the scene to go. 11 cries while she holds Max's hand. Or if they wanted 11 to be near Max's heart, 11 could have been crying into Max's chest or reaching out to her chest somehow. 11 would have flashbacks of her and Max's good times, since it would be their power of love that 11 unknowingly uses to bring life back into Max. The scene would then turn to silence with the cries of 11 and Lucas slowly muffling while the camera zooms into Max's chest or mouth. The camera would then stop on a close zoom in on Max's mouth or chest while we see Lucas and 11 mourning in the background. It would pause for a couple of seconds to make us think that Max is really gone. But then, we see or hear Max take a breath. The scene would be abruptly cut off right after the breath, and then we would go to the 2 days later cutscene. I think that would have been a great way to frame 11's healing power as something she didn't know she had, rather than something 11 seemed to know she had. Having 11 discover her healing power like this would have been a greater and more believable moment for me. I'm not sure how Max will contribute to the story in the last season. We saw Vecna complete his ritual on Max, so Max should have all her limbs broken and should be blind. The only future storylines I can see Max contributing to is to empower other characters like Lucas or Eleven. Or maybe they are pushing Max's death further so it could be her death while in the hospital that pushes a member of our group to do something heroic or irrational. I don't think that Max will be able to fully heal from her injuries by time because I think that would dull Vecna's powers. I have a theory on how Max's story could come back in the final season, but it could be far-fetched. Maybe Max's soul or mind is still stuck in the Upside Down or Vecna's lair. When we see Eleven push Vecna off of Max, we see Max fall to the ground and she seems unbroken. Max's conscious could be lost within the Upside Down, or Vecna could still have possession of Max's conscious. I think this could lead to one of two things in the next season. Eleven could have to try to save Max's conscious from wherever it is, or Vecna could use Max as a vessel to get to Lucas or Eleven. Alright, even with my slander of Max, a scene of hers really got me to tear up as well. The scene is when Max and Lucas are in the Creel house attic and Max had just been broken. Caleb McLaughlin and Sadie Sink's performance here was very heart-wrenching. Hearing Lucas's desperate cries for help and Max's cries to live was very agonizing to see. The part that made me break into tears was when Max finally goes and we hear Lucas let out an anguishing yell.
Max, please stay with me.
I was already sobbing from Eddie's death that we just saw, but this one just added on to the pain. Yeah, I was not okay after the finale. One last thing I have with Max. I wonder if we will ever get to see what she wrote in the letters that she gave to everybody. When characters write letters as a goodbye, I always want to know what they wrote. I want the show to not forget about the letters, and I would like them to integrate the letters into the final season somehow. Hopper's storyline. The plotline where Joyce and Murray go to rescue Hopper felt very unnecessarily long to me. I think that Dimitri's plan should have just worked out so the plotline wouldn't have to feel so dragged out. Even though they wanted the Yuri betrayal to be an insane subverting of expectations, it just felt like a weak way to stretch out saving Hopper to a full season. I mean, even when they actually escaped the second time, they just head right back into the prison for no apparent reason. They say that killing the Demogorgons and Demodogs will help the kids, but we don't see that happen at all. Maybe if we saw Vecna being weakened by the death of the Demo monsters, then it makes sense, but we don't see anything. It's just Hopper and Murray killing some Demodogs and a Demogorgon. I think that it'd be better if they explained it as them going back to kill the Demo monsters so the Russians don't have them to be used as weapons, or to just be rid of the Demo monsters in general. As much as I like Hopper, if he doesn't have a significant role in the last season, then I think he should have actually stayed dead.
What did he say?
Now, I know that's another controversial statement, but it's what I think. This is a similar situation that I have with Max as well. Both Hopper and Max seem to die, but then they come back. I just don't think that this writing technique should be used as much, as it brings down the gravity and suspense of a character's death. I mean, now what will happen to Hopper in the final season? Will he die again? You see, it just makes Hopper's death in the future not as impactful since he was already seen as dead before. Now, I really liked Hopper in Season 1. I think that Season 1 Hopper was such a great character to follow as he uncovered the mystery of Hawkins, and his backstory was just so tragic. But it feels like his character has been regressing as the seasons go on. The best part of Season 2 Hopper was his relationship with Eleven, but I don't think that it matched his character in Season 1 still. Then in Season 3, I felt like they butchered his character to become something that he shouldn't be. I think that this season was a start to making Hopper great again though. They just need to continue on this path for the next season and have Hopper be involved in the defeat of Vecna. I do have one question for the show though. Why is Hopper shooting an AK-47 with one hand? If it's supposed to make him look cool, it didn't work for me at all. It just makes Hopper look like he wants to be a gangster. Also, do we know where Dimitri and Yuri are? I think the last time we see them is when they fly in to take Joyce, Murray, and Hopper home, but we never hear or see where they went. I really like Dimitri, and not just because he was a faceless man. I hope we get some sort of resolution to Dimitri, and maybe not so much for Yuri, because I still don't like him. The Demogorgon. I am so glad that we got to see the Demogorgon in full action this season. When we saw the Demogorgon in Season 1, everything was mostly off screen, so it was nice to finally see the Demogorgon destroy some people. In Episode 7, when the Demogorgon jumps out of the darkness and we get a long take of the Demogorgon obliterating the prisoners, I was audibly cheering. I didn't think we'd get to see the Demogorgon just ragdoll the prisoners, so when we saw it just clawing through bodies and munching on heads, I was so happy. I am sad that the Demogorgon did die though, as it makes the monster seem like it is weaker than we thought. I mean, in the first season, the great thing about the Demogorgon was that it seemed unkillable. It took the full power of 11 to finally kill an old and weakened Demogorgon. But I'm hoping that we will get to see more of the Demogorgon in the last season. I would really like to see like 10 Demogorgons just tearing through crowds of people and causing absolute chaos. The Demogorgon was the monster that started off the whole series, so I wanted to get more to do, but I don't think it will, since the narrative seems to be pretty focused on Vecna until the end. The Demogorgon is just such a cool creature that Stranger Things created that I think it'd be a waste not to have it in the spotlight some more. Will not helping 11. One thing that bothered me the entire season was Will and 11's relationship. Seeing as they are now essentially siblings, it really made me mad that we didn't see Will supporting 11 more. Every time that we saw 11 getting bullied, I was expecting Will to step in or at the very least comfort her. In 2 instances, we see Will stand around while 11 is harassed by crowds of people, and I just wanted one time where Will stepped in and helped her in some way. They really made Will seem like a heartless brother to 11, so when we see Will and 11 embrace after she gets out of the bunker, it just feels unwarranted. If we saw a better relationship between the two, then I think that scene probably would have been great. I just wish that we got to see more of the Byers family's dynamic. Next up, I'm going to be giving some of my thoughts on deaths for the next season. Now, most of these predictions aren't what I want or think will happen, but rather situations I think could happen if the show decides that they do want to kill characters. I want to stress that I don't think that this show should turn into something that it hasn't been. We have never gotten a main character death in the show, so I don't think it would be appropriate for the show to suddenly kill off half the main cast like it's Infinity War. With that said, I do think that we will get a couple main character deaths to complete character arcs and to complete the story of the show. Will or 11 or both will die. I think that if the series is going to end with the annihilation of the Upside Down, Will and or 11 will have to sacrifice themselves. For 11's case, it is simply the fact that she's the one that created the rift between the Upside Down and the real world. Since 11 created the portal between the two worlds, it could be her sacrifice that is needed to permanently close the portal by all means necessary. Now, to argue for Will's case, it seems as though the Upside Down is frozen on the day that Will went missing. Adding to that, Will was also the first ever abduction into the Upside Down. When Henry was getting tossed around in the Upside Down, we saw that the realm didn't resemble Hawkins at all. It seems as though the Upside Down only changed its environment once Will was abducted into the Upside Down. That could mean that the Upside Down was manifested by Will's conscious, or even more, is Will's conscious. Now, I want you all to hear me out on this theory that I have, because I'm picking at strands right now, so it could be completely off. In Season 4, we also learned that Henry seems to be the one in control of the Upside Down and its inhabitants. We learned that the attacks from the Upside Down were at the hand of Henry. That means that every abduction and every monster attack were at Henry's order. When Will is captured in the pilot of the series, we are to think that he was abducted by the Demogorgon. But if that's the case, wouldn't the Demogorgon have just eaten Will right there? If the Demogorgon likes to put fear in its prey before it eats it, we could tell that Will was horrified, so it makes sense for the Demogorgon to have eaten Will in a timely manner. But that's not what happened. We are to believe that Will survived the Upside Down solely on his wits, but how realistic is that? If it were the Demogorgon chasing Will in the Upside Down, why doesn't it kill Will there either? It seems like it'd be the perfect time to feast on Will, but maybe it's because the Demogorgon was being controlled by Henry. Now, we don't get too much of an explanation of how Henry can control the monsters of the Upside Down, so what I say next could be inaccurate. I think that Henry was able to command or even control the Demogorgon that we see in Season 1. I think that Henry wanted to capture someone that lived in the Hawkins area so he could use them as a vessel to manifest Hawkins into the Upside Down. Henry was able to capture Will and used him as a vessel, therefore making the point of why Will was never killed. At the end of Episode 2 and the beginning of Episode 3 of Season 1, we see Barb be taken in a similar way. Barb is also presumed to have been taken by the Demogorgon, but when we see her dead in the Upside Down, she wasn't mauled on or anything. Barb's body seemed to be similar to those of Henry's gate killings, but without the bone breakage so far as we could see. That means that Barb's capture could have been by Henry controlling a Demogorgon once again. Now, as to why Henry would capture Barb, I don't really have a solution. Maybe she was being used as another person to help build upon the Upside Down Hawkins, or maybe Will did escape from Henry when he was transported into the Upside Down, meaning that Henry had to find another person to maybe occupy Will's place. We know that Will is eventually captured by presumably the Demogorgon in the finale of Season 1. We see that Barb's body and Will's body are both inside the public library and near one another, similar to how Chrissy and Fred's body were in the same vicinity. When Joyce finally sees Will, he is strapped to a wall and he has what looks like a tentacle down his throat. Now, I'm not sure if what was down Will's throat was a tentacle or a worm-like creature, but to me, it looks like a tentacle that Henry uses in Season 4. This could have been how Henry connected Will to the Upside Down, or even how Will is connected to Henry himself. I think that Will's ability to sense things could be him sensing the realm of the Upside Down, or he could be even sensing Henry, since in the finale of Season 4, Will says that he can feel Henry, and he can feel that Henry is still alive. This means that Henry and Will have a connection with one another. This could lead to the theory that Will is the key to closing the rift between the world and the Upside Down, or that Will is the key to defeating Henry. Now, I'm not sure how all this will go down, if it's true, but I think it will end with a sacrifice or sacrifices to defeat Henry. And another thing I would like to add that could support Henry controlling the Demogorgon is with Dr. Brenner. Realize how Dr. Brenner was saved from the murders in the lab in Season 4. Henry killed basically everyone in the lab, but saved Dr. Brenner. I'm not sure if they fully explained why Henry does this, but I think it might have been Henry's way to make Dr. Brenner suffer, or Henry thinks of Dr. Brenner as so insignificant that death would be too easy for him. That could be why in Season 1, we saw the Demogorgon attack Dr. Brenner, but Dr. Brenner wasn't killed. Just like in the labs, Henry didn't kill Dr. Brenner. Steve or Robin will die. First, for Steve's case. Now, I don't really have much solid support for this prediction, rather, it's just a feeling that I have. I feel like everyone that watches Stranger Things is a fan of Steve. He may not be your favorite, but he's in your top 10. I think a way to create a moment that would break all of the Stranger Things fans' hearts would be to kill Steve. Steve's death would be devastating to everyone. He was the guy that successfully turned from bad to good. Steve changed himself to become a better person and to help protect this group of kids he found that accepted him in. I think if they were to kill off Steve, it would need to be a heroic sacrifice to save all the kids. I think that if they give him anything less than that, then it'd be doing a disservice to his character. As much as I would like to see Steve have his family of 8, I don't know if he'll get a happy ending. For Robin's case, it could be a tragic ending of a great friendship. Since Robin was introduced, the Steve and Robin duo has been filled with so much emotion and genuine friendship. If they wanted Steve to live, I think Robin would have to sacrifice herself to save Steve. Both Steve and Robin have been there for each other and have been there to support their relationships. Maybe Steve finds someone that he loves and Robin decides to give her life so Steve can be happy. This could happen the other way around with Steve giving up his life to save Robin's, but I think Steve's death would need to involve saving the kids. But what do I know? Maybe both of them will die together with one final standoff to save the kids. One of the main 4 kids will die. I already spoke about Will, so I'm going to give my thoughts on the other 3. I think that the most tragic death that would happen is if Dustin dies. Dustin has always been the fun and creative member of the show. Everybody likes him because he is just a good person. I think if Dustin were to be taken away from us, it'd be the most heart-wrenching and toughest one to see. The next in line I would have to say would be Mike. Although Mike hasn't really gotten much to do besides loving Eleven, I think it is that trait that could lead to his death. Mike's death could be used to trigger Eleven's full potential. Now for Lucas. Depending on what they do with Max, I think that Lucas could be a tragic death or a heroic death. If Max is able to come through and be Max again, I think Lucas could have a tragic death that affects Max deeply. It could be an unexpected stab through the heart, or it could be a sacrifice to bring Max back to life. Now, I could be wrong with all of these since these are our main characters and the ones we started with. I'm not sure how dark the show will get, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I want to remind you too that this is not me asking or wanting these characters to die. Nancy's death. Now this one is one that I'm pulling out of a black hole. If Nancy were to die, it would cause massive distress to 3 major characters. The first one is obviously Mike since she's his brother, but the other 2 I think are more interesting. I would like to see how Nancy's death would affect Jonathan and Steve. Now, depending on how she dies, this could cause many effects. Nancy's death could cause Jonathan and Steve's already draining relationship to pull further apart, or it could pull them together closer than ever. We could see Jonathan and Steve have another rivalry, or what I would like to see, we could see Jonathan and Steve working together to defeat Nancy's killer. I think that both instances would be interesting to see. Our group will win. Now, this one could be a no-brainer, but I figured I'd just toss it here anyways. I don't think that it'd be appropriate for this series if Henry or some other being were to win. The final season shouldn't turn into what I wanted Game of Thrones to end like. Stranger Things has never been a realistic, deep, depressing show. It's always been a show about triumph, so I don't think the show should subvert our expectations and try to do something bold. Henry's invasion. This isn't much of a prediction, rather something I would like to see. In the finale of Season 4, we see that Henry has won and seems to have opened a giant portal through Hawkins. I hope that we will get to see Henry invade the real world with all his monsters from the Upside Down. 8 will return. Now, I know this one is controversial, again, but as much as people didn't like the 8 plotline in Season 2, I don't think the show should forget that they did introduce her. In Season 4, we hear Henry mention 8 and her escape, and we also see a young 11 and 8 playing with one another. So that could mean the show doesn't seem to be abandoning her completely. I think that the 8 plot needs to be resolved somehow. Just because people didn't like that plot doesn't mean that they should scrap it if they had big plans for it. I think that it'd be a big plot hole for the series if we never hear about 8 ever again. Now, as to how she could return, your guess is as good as mine. I'm guessing she'll have heard of the portal opening in Hawkins, so that could bring 8 to Hawkins to reunite with 11. And even then, I'm not sure if 8's power are powerful enough to defeat Henry. From what I remember, 8's power was the ability to make people hallucinate or see things, and I'm not sure how much damage her power could do to any monster or Henry. I mean, maybe in the climax of a fight, 8 could show up and use her power to make Henry see his traumatic past or something. Or maybe 8 can even confuse or control the feelings of any of the demo monsters. I mean, whatever she does, I just hope that 8 will have something valuable to do, and I don't think 8 should be forgotten. Well, those were some of my thoughts on Stranger Things Season 4. I didn't really get to watching it until maybe a week after Volume 2 came out. I mean, when Volume 1 came out, I think I felt a reverse burnout. It seemed like it was so long ago that we got Season 3 that I just sort of forgot and didn't have the urge to watch Season 4 because of the 3-year break sponsored by the Cough Cough 19. Even with the long break, I think that Stranger Things Season 4 should have been delayed longer. Now, when I say that, I don't mean by waiting another year for nothing. I mean that I think the show should be released weekly. I think the weekly episodes are a great way to keep the longevity of a series. Everybody watching the show would be at similar parts, so it'd be easier to talk about the show. And if they keep doing crazy cliffhangers like in Season 4, the hype for the show would be even greater for each incoming episode. I think that doing weekly episodes would have made the show have a greater shelf life from the beginning, but we can't turn back time. I don't think it's too late for the final season to be in a weekly style since they already sort of did it with this season by splitting up Volume 1 and 2. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video on some of my favorite moments and crazy theories. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share about Stranger Things Season 4, feel free to comment them down below. But until I see you next time, have a good rest of your day.